All right, so we have a small cozy group right now. So we're going to get started and give everyone else a chance to come back from the microwave, from heating up their lunches or whatever, and log on. So we'll start with our introduction. So I am Carrie Patrizio. I'm an HR business partner at Compass Workforce Solutions, here for this presentation with Marie. I'm a certified HR professional. I have the SHRM-CP certification, and I've also recently received the Predictive Index Talent Optimizer certification, which I find very interesting, and let us know if you want to talk about that after. We're happy to go into that more and how we can help you with that. And I've been in HR for about between 12 and 14 years, depending on the roles I've held. Marie?
Thank you. So I am Marie Mareno. I'm an HR generalist here at Compass. I am also a SHRM certified practitioner. And as part of my SHRM certification, I also facilitate SHRM study groups where I'm actually teaching other HR professionals what they need to know to be able to obtain that certification as well. I have about 15 to 16 years now of experience in both management and human resources. I also have a bachelor's degree in human resources. And like Carrie, I am also certified in the predictive index. So this is our second part of a two-part session on onboarding. So if you joined us the first time, I believe we were back in February, welcome back. If you haven't, no worries. We're going to recap a little bit on what we went over during that first session. So we started with sharing these slide results. So recently, Paychex conducted a survey of a little over 1,000 working Americans who started their jobs within the past year. And they asked them about how their onboarding experience affected their job and what could have been done better. And what was found is that 50% of those people surveyed shared that they plan to actually leave their current employer. And this was with a direct correlation to a poor onboarding experience and a lack of training. And some of the key takeaways from that survey were that, one, remote employees are more likely than on-site ones to feel undertrained. Remote employees are 117% more likely than on-site employees to plan to leave their employer soon. Also, employees working for large companies tended to be more satisfied with their onboarding than employees in small companies. And also, nearly 1/3 of employees found the onboarding experience to be confusing. So this kind of segues into a lot of what we're going to be talking about today.
Right. So we'll be helping you to understand the importance of comprehensive onboarding. We are going to define the concept of employee onboarding and its significance in shaping the whole employee experience. We'll ID the key compliance elements of a successful onboarding process, recognizing how effective onboarding contributes to employee engagement, retention, and overall organizational success, which those are our top three, right? For every employer, we want to engage our employees, we want to retain, and we want the success of the employee as well as the organization. Why else did we hire these people? So we'll talk about navigating the onboarding journey. We want to outline the stages of the employee onboarding process, literally from pre-arrival to the integration into the organizational culture. A lot of us tend to think that onboarding ends after we do the I-9. So we're here to tell you that is not the case, yes? We want to provide insights for you into best practices for each onboarding stage. And again, there are several, including orientation, training, and socialization. Equip participants with tools and strategies to streamline the onboarding journey for diverse roles within the organization is key here. We want to develop the skills for you to be an onboarding master. Yes, you know. Explore the practical techniques here for fostering a positive onboarding experience for your new hires. That's huge. Highlight communication strategies to ensure effective information transfer to new hires. How are they going to know what they're supposed to do if we don't tell them? Discuss ways to evaluate and continuously improve the onboarding process, aligning it with the evolving needs of your organization and your workforce, okay? So again, comprehensive onboarding, how important is it? Navigate that whole journey and develop skills for onboarding mastery.
And then just a few housekeeping things before we jump into it. This is an interactive session, so feel free to use the chat, share questions, thoughts, ideas. Something new that we've also recently done is our webinars will now be available for HRCI credit. So some information will be shared with you on how to obtain those credits.
And please chime in if you have a question or a comment. We don't want to seem like we're alone in the room here. So give us something. We could always learn something new as well.
All right, so let's recap from our first session. So this is what we went over. We talked about what is onboarding. Employee onboarding is a strategic process that goes beyond administrative tasks. And it's really a crucial and critical investment in the employee experience. It contributes to productivity, employee engagement, and overall organizational success. We also talked about why is onboarding important. And there are a multitude of reasons why this is such an important process. A few of those are that it leads to increased employee engagement, faster productivity and integration, increased retention, and reduced turnover. So if you onboard someone successfully, it is much more likely that they're going to stay with your organization.
And they'll hit the ground running a lot faster. If you don't give them the information that they need, they're going to be looking around going,
What do I do?
Especially now in the time when some of your employees may, be remote several times in the week. That makes it even more difficult and more critical that we do this right.
Yes. And we also talked about how it can help with clarification of roles and responsibilities. So people really get a deep understanding of what is my role, what are my tasks, where do I fit in here, and what should I be doing? And then lastly, it helps ensure compliance with federal, state, and local guidelines. So if you set yourself up successfully, you'll ensure that those I-9s are completed on time. Any other requirements in New York State, they need a wage notice completed, employment posters, and the list kind of goes on and on. But as long as you're prepared, you'll be compliant. And then we also talked about how to plan that onboarding experience. So how to properly plan for their first day, their first week, their first 30 days.
Yes, folks, 30 days, we said
it. And part of the planning is asking yourself and answering some critical questions. So when will onboarding start? How long will it last? What impression do you want your new hires to walk away with at the end of that first day?
I'll tell you what that is. What a great company. I'm so glad I got hired.
Yeah, I'm
Not
excited.
somebody help. I don't know what to do.
Exactly. And preparing for onboarding and ensuring compliance. So a best practice here is to create a checklist for new hires, which includes all of those federal, state, local, and company guidelines and the forms that need to be completed. Preparing that new hire paperwork in advance is extremely helpful. So there are bound to be some hiccups that are just going to be out of your control when a new employee is brought on board. But preparing their new hire paperwork does not and should not be one of them. And then we covered roles and responsibilities. So who's going to be involved in the onboarding? What role will they play? Maybe you'll use a buddy or a mentor system. This way, this person has a go-to that they can rely on during that first week, 30 days, and so on. We also talked about communicating expectations to whoever's going to be involved in advance and ensure that everyone is prepared. And kind of back to that survey that we spoke a little bit about, the number one response from that survey for how to improve onboarding is getting the team involved. So we spent a little bit of time covering this, how to get your managers involved, the other team members involved, and how to really make that person feel welcome.
So again, just to recap, during the first session, we asked participants to share one word which describes how they'd like employees to feel after their first day. You'll notice that we have all positive words here. I will tell you just from experiences that I've shared with other people, that is not always the case. So take a look at this, see how it supports how you feel about how you think people should feel on their first day, how you felt on your first day, and think about for yourself what you need to do to make sure that this is exactly how they leave feeling at 5 o'clock. So we have a question for you. How would your most recent new hires describe their onboarding experience? Dig deep, folks. Be honest. How do you think your most recent new hires would describe their onboarding experience?
You can use the Slido. So you could go to slido.com and enter that number to share your opinion, or you can use the QR code, or if you'd like, you can type directly into the chat.
We'll give you a few minutes to go ahead and do that. Feel like we should have a little.
Welcomed. Welcomed. You can see some people are still typing.
Cared for. I like that a lot.
Welcomed and confused. Yeah, that could very well happen.
Well, a lot of you seem to be very successful. Do you feel like those of you who've answered, do you feel like there's anything at all that perhaps an employee might feel other than welcomed? Is there any chance they might feel confused or not sure what to do next?
Potentially overwhelmed. I've personally seen that a lot, and it is usually like a brain dump of information on an employee's first day.
It's funny because usually what I do is I make their first day shorter. I usually let them come in around 9:30, 10 o'clock, depending, and then I send them home a good hour later and an hour early because the first day can be so overwhelming and you don't know these people. So they could very well look composed and just fine, but inside it's a tornado. So thank you for sharing that, Elizabeth. We appreciate your honesty.
Yeah. Something I like to do is I like to break up the day. So it's not so much information overload. And then also allow the person some time on their own to review things.
But not too much. So bear that in mind because that is very helpful, but don't leave them with a spreadsheet and say, hey, take a look at this. I'll be back in 3 hours because then your onboarding experience just went down the toilet.
And if you are a predictive index client with us, then you'll have some insight usually in advance to that person's behavioral profile. So you can tell, is this someone who's more analytical and introspective, where they might want a little bit of time to kind of digest things?
Yeah.
Or are they someone who's more extroverted and likes to talk things out? And in this case, you need to plan for that and make sure that they have that social interaction and the ability to do that.
Yeah, all the balloons might be too much for the first day for somebody. So keep that in mind.
Perfect. So let's start digging into our second session. So we're going to talk a little bit about the elements of the onboarding process. So there are 6 key elements that we look at. One are the pre-onboarding activities. So this includes the job offer and documentation. So sending out the job offer letter, completing any necessary pre-employment documentation, such as an employment application, and then also preparing for the first day. So providing information about the first day, communicating the person's schedule, what the dress code is, what they need to bring, and what they can expect.
And also who they're going to meet with. I think we often leave that out. It's important that somebody knows when they show up at the building, who to ask for.
Yes. And that person is ready to meet them.
Yes, and doesn't leave them there 10, 15 minutes in the lobby.
No.
Getting to know the security guard.
Yes, exactly. Part of the pre-onboarding activities also include setting up their workspace and setting up their technology.
And a pencil and a pen and a stapler and tape. You wouldn't believe how important tape is.
Yeah.
Little things.
And then one of the other components is the welcome and introduction. So kind of like we said, making sure whoever is going to be welcoming them is there, they're ready, and they're prepared to make their first day special. You want that new hire to feel welcomed. You want them to feel valued and that you're excited to have them there.
I was sorry. I was joking about the balloons. I just want to go on record for that. But I have to say that there have been experiences that I've had as a new hire where like they took me out to lunch. And the first time that happened, I thought, I felt so wanted that they took the time to take me out to lunch. And since then, I've always made an effort to do that. Like I'll have, even if it's a couple people, I'll have pizza in the conference room and ask the manager to bring somebody from the department in to just sort of meet them on a more informal basis, you know what I mean? So balloons, not necessarily, but do something special that that person is gonna go home at the end of the day and tell everybody else about how their first day was, that they can talk about.
Yeah. And let's be honest, you spent a lot of time, money, energy to get this person on your team. You made them feel wanted when you made them that job offer. You don't want them to come in and feel like, oh, I'm a burden. Like they don't even have time to teach me anything or spend some time with me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess here's a good place to share, a couple people that I know, one of them, family member, they just both started new jobs and they're entry level in their career. And both of them in two different jobs, two different employers, sat for an entire week without anyone talking to them. One of them got a spreadsheet to look at and the whole week. And I have to say that at the end of that week, they said, I don't want to work here anymore. And I don't think the person even thought about who was managing their onboarding experience, thought that that was an issue, but they got wrapped up in their own workday. So please make sure that the manager or somebody who's going to be working with that new hire has time on their calendar, put on the calendar to meet with that employee, because we all have calendars we have to manage, but you need to make sure that that employee does not go home thinking they're not even needed or wanted.
Right. Especially for our HR professionals on the call that you're the one scheduling that onboarding. Definitely make sure you work with the manager. Like, is this a good week for this person to start? Do you have time? The last thing you want is for them to come in and what's the plan? And then also orientation. So a lot of times people do confuse orientation with onboarding. Onboarding is the bigger process. Orientation is just a piece of that. This involves going over your company policies and procedures, whether it's your employee handbook, any expectations or related policies, also going over benefits and the administrative paperwork, and then any safety and compliance training that might be required. And then the next component is role-specific training. So obviously this will relate directly to the position that that person is coming into. It involves going over their job duties and their responsibilities, clarifying them with them, talking about performance expectations. So what does successful look like in this role? Showing them any tools and systems. So training them on any equipment, any software that they're going to be using, any systems that they'll have access to, and making sure that they have logins or you have a plan to set them up with logins to those systems. And then product or service knowledge. So really educating that new hire about the company's products, about their services. What is it that your company does? What is it that the other departments do so that they can get a full grasp of what goes on in your business? And then cultural integration. And part of this is really just getting them integrated into whatever your company specific culture is. You could do a mentor or buddy system. So assigning someone who's more experienced to act as their mentor can really help that person navigate the first few weeks or the first few months.
Yeah, and I think that's like we just talked about, making sure that there's time on the manager's schedule. This can help that. If you have a manager with an overburdened schedule and you assign a mentor or a buddy, that gives the manager time to spend attending to their own schedule, but someone is hanging out with that new hire, making sure that if they have questions or showing them the ropes so that part of their day is full.
Yeah, and we do that a lot here. So we will rely on other team members that work directly with the day-to-day to mentor that person and be their buddy as they learn some of the new processes. You can also consider maybe some team integration activities. So encouraging them to participate in some team meetings, like Carrie mentioned, doing some lunches or other activities that can really help them build relationships with their coworkers. And then the last component is ongoing development and evaluation. So determining what is this person or this role's professional development plan, discussing career paths, any professional development opportunities that are available within your organization, And then reviewing performance goals and conducting evaluations. So it is helpful to set some short-term performance goals with your new hire, and schedule that first performance review with them to discuss their progress, any challenges that they're having, and expectations. So you definitely want to have a plan beyond that first day, that first week, to make sure that they're developing and that they're meeting the expectations of the position. So let's do a little activity together. We're going to rank the elements of the onboarding process in order from most important to least important to the employee's success. And let's just preface it with, we think that all of these elements are extremely important.
Why else would we be here?
But this is just a fun activity to get you thinking about these elements.
And it's not about what's first in the day. Keep that in mind. Okay, we're talking about the most important to your new hire.
And to their
Success.
So if you want to type in the chat, take a guess. What do you think is the number one most important item here?
And we have these over on the left side of the screen. So we have pre-onboarding activities, welcome and introduction or an introduction. We have orientation, role-specific training, cultural integration, and then ongoing development and evaluation. Ready, go. Definitely feel free to take a few seconds to think about what is involved in those activities.
Yeah, and as you're thinking, as Carrie and I were putting this together, we spent quite a bit of time discussing this and going back and forth on what we thought would be most important.
Which is why there is no right or wrong answer. Okay, there's a lot of minutia involved in these things, so you could have one idea and someone else could have another. Let's give them the first one.
Yeah. Yeah. So
good job, Marcia.
Yeah.
Well, role-specific training, Elizabeth says. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So we went with welcome and introduction. Carrie, why did you think this one might be the most important to their success?
Well, hi, how are you? We're so happy to have you. I think that sets the tone for the entire process. Feeling welcomed and like they know who the players are in the game. So yes.
Yeah.
I like that. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. If you feel welcomed and you get to introduce everyone, you immediately, it just changes your whole attitude. And that's your first impression. You never get a second chance to make another first impression. All right, what do we think is the second most important?
Okay.
You have orientation and cultural integration.
And I think Elizabeth said role-specific training.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
Right, let's see what we've got. Cultural integration. You guys are hot. We like it. All right. So why do you think, Marie, that is most important cultural integration as the second choice?
Yeah, I think if the employee feels like they belong, they understand the culture of the company, and they identify with it, they're going to feel very comfortable. And if you feel comfortable, you're more open to learning. You're more open to asking questions. And honestly, it just changes your mindset.
Yeah, if you don't know anybody and you don't know how you fit in, you're not likely to ask anybody anything.
No.
Because you don't know who to ask.
Yeah. Yeah, these are tough.
Hey, we think this whole thing was going to be free? Oh, wait, it is free. Let's see what the third one is.
All right, what do we think is third?
Prisha said pre-onboarding.
Yeah. So let's bring it up.
Orientation.
Yeah. Yeah, but we went with orientation.
Talk about it. What do we think?
Yeah. I think because orientation really involves introducing them and going over policies and procedures.
Yeah, because like they know the game, right? They know they feel welcome, so they're comfortable, right? They know who is around and who they can ask questions of. Then they're really going to want to know benefits. They're going to want to know, all of those things. They want to wonder why they brought their passport. Yeah. Right.
And then also learning about the employee handbook. What are the policies and
Mhm.
procedures with this company? I know the culture. Now I know the policies and procedures. They're really developing that well-rounded understanding. All right, what about number 4? Yeah. Role-specific
Yes,
training.
spot on.
Yeah, Sophia. I think we're all gonna agree, like now they know the company, they know the culture. Now they need to know exactly what they should be doing. What's their role?
And this is where we either succeed or fail, I think,
Mhm.
right? Because everything else has been kind of dictated by the packet, right? But role-specific training, that's where an employee either gets what they need or they don't.
Mhm.
And they either succeed or fail immediately in the eyes of their manager, for example, because they don't know how to do something. And it's usually because we didn't give them the training that they
Yeah.
needed,
Exactly.
assuming they already knew.
All right, so let's move on to number 5. Go with ongoing development and evaluation. Yes, yeah, Sophia, they'd be more motivated if they had that perspective about development. This gives them the insight into where does this role go? What are the expectations for me for growth? And what opportunities are there? And this ties right back into retention and engagement.
Yeah, I think that a lot of if having spoken to a lot of new hires in my career, that's one of the issues, right? They always said, they always say they would meet with me after my first 3 months and nobody did. One of the things that one of our clients does is they give the new hire on their first onboarding experience, they give them the 30-day evaluation
Mhm.
at first. So they know what they're going to be put up against, right? And I don't want to say judged because that's not really a good word here, but they know what their manager is going to be looking for from them in that evaluation when 30-day comes. So it's actually a great idea. I've never seen that before, and I really like that.
Yeah, me
It gives
too.
you an idea of what you should be looking to have achieved by then.
Mhm. Definitely. All right, so last we have the pre-onboarding activities. And this is about preparing your offer, your employment application, preparing for their first day. This is extremely important, but we put it last because when we talk about employee success, you can come back from this.
Yes, you can. If you don't send a welcome email, then you didn't. And it doesn't, it's not anything you can't fix later on with a good welcome and a nice cultural integration. So we felt like this fell on the bottom, almost like paperwork, kind of like,
Yeah.
just those mandatory items that really need to get done. Again, very important, but maybe not as important to the employees' morale and also success.
Right. Important to compliance though, so that doesn't mean leave it out.
Yeah, don't do that.
All right, so let's talk about the employee's first day. So I know we each shared how we'd like our employees to feel following their first day. Your first day should have really 2 main goals. Those are setting the expectations and introducing objectives. So the employee really needs to leave having a crystal clear idea about what their job duties are and what those responsibilities are. You could include, sending that welcome message, having a plan to introduce them around the office or around the workplace, providing them with an office tour and showing them their workspace. Even if you did an office tour when they interviewed, do it again. More than likely, they forgot where things are. Even if they introduced to people previously during an interview, again, do it again. You don't know how many places they interviewed. Also issuing their equipment and their tools. So we mentioned this earlier. And then consider giving them some company swag. So if you're going to do this, just do it. Like make sure that you're good, giving them some good swag and that you're
Yeah.
consistent in it.
Yeah, and with regards to issuing equipment and tools, don't make the first day the day that you apologize 47 times for why they don't have their email yet or they don't have their passwords yet. I've definitely been through that and we don't want that to happen. So one of the things that we mentioned early on was the predictive index. And PI here is going to help with the company culture integration, right? Because we're talking about company history, mission, values, and these should be part of your handbook, right? Introduction to key team members and colleagues, integration activities for social connection. Those should be riding alongside this entire thing. But one of the things that predictive index that we've discussed can help with is helping a hiring manager build an intentional team with team members who actually complement each other, right? Tackle blind spots and communication styles. So this lends to introduction to key team members and colleagues. You know who that person is going to possibly gel with before they even get on board. So when it comes to getting the right people around the table, the predictive index is a powerful tool here. It's going to measure a person's behavioral data to help hiring managers determine fit between the individual and the role. And then if the role requires, let's say, a special detail, attention to detail and planning far into the future, for example, PI is going to identify candidates before you even hire them who are a match for that role. So, for example, the adapter, the PI Swiss Army knife, right? This person, then the altruist, the heart of gold, a great work ethic, the analyzer, details, details, details. You have to, when you're thinking about a role, you're thinking about where this person is actually going to fit and whether this person has that personality to fit into what you want from them. And then secondly, as mentioned earlier, the right mix of people on the team. It provides a look at how existing team members are behaviorally wired to help hiring managers ensure positive team dynamics, right? Designing teams with the right combo of personality, experience, expertise, and cognitive styles. A very PI strategically designed team suffers from fewer decision-making blind spots and actually really better able to collaborate and communicate. And this is probably evidenced within the first few months of hire. And helps everything gel in a really positive way.
So let's hear from everyone. We talked about, how to integrate some social activities that you might do. What social activities do you use in your company?
And again, feel free to use the Slido. If you're not able to do that, you can make comments in the chat.
Or if you don't use any, that's okay. You could share that too. It's anonymous if you use the Slido.
I think that we kind of meant this one to be a little bit of a maybe suggestions, right? So you could come away with some ideas on what social activities to use if you don't already. So I mentioned the pizza. I mentioned taking out to lunch. We also I've done in several places. We had a bowling team. Quarterly outing somebody put out there. So that's nice too. We've done, there was always a manager who maybe went out on Tuesday nights to one of the local watering holes. And it was almost a great place for the new hires to go because they felt connected with that manager then, and it made them feel comfortable. Friday games.
Yeah, for a remote team. I think that's great. And we're going to talk a little bit about remote employees and how to engage them and onboard. Book club with a meal, smoothie Thursdays. That's great. Celebrating birthdays, special celebrations in each country.
Yeah. You have probably got to be an expert because it's really hard to keep people engaged virtually, especially if you don't drink wine, because they do those wine ones where you send a bottle of wine to the person and then everybody has a cocktail together. What if you don't? What are you left out? So I would be more interested to hear what kinds of things you do for a remote staff.
We try to bring everyone's culture and celebrate them. That's great. Cool. I love that.
I love that. All right, any last ones before we move? Oh, somebody's typing. They stopped. Wait, start it again. We'll give that one last person a chance.
Yeah, Karen, I think you kind of mentioned it, like things like, the wine drinking or a virtual happy hour on Friday. Like the intention is great, but you want to consider your employees and your workforce. It's
almost akin to having a crochet club on Friday. Like not everybody's gonna have a clue, so make sure there's plenty of space. Flew in all remote. Whoa, that's awesome. Love that. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, can we work there? No, just kidding. We did axe throwing, did we not? That was actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, we did. We did axe throwing, we did
Right,
a top
Sophia?
golf outing. Very fun. All right, great. And somebody did ask us, this is being recorded, so everyone will receive a recording of this. All right, so let's move on to one of our other elements, which is navigating company policies and procedures. So really setting expectations by reviewing your company policies and your procedures is a great way to ensure that the person understands what's expected of them, the processes that are in place, and it avoids the potential for mistakes or for non-compliance. And it's really helpful because one, now this person has that understanding, but in the event that the person doesn't follow the policies set forth, say in your employee handbook, you can hold them accountable because you know that it was reviewed with them and they signed off on it.
Yeah.
You also want to review your code of conduct and ethical guidelines. This is usually part of your employee handbook. And then any job specific requirements that need to be reviewed. So OSHA, if you're in New York City, they do need to have their sexual harassment training within their first 90 days. New York, it's annually, and it really depends on what state and what city you're in. And consider any compliance training and your legal requirements. So if there's anything beyond the OSHA, beyond the sexual harassment prevention training, you want to ensure that this is completed as part of the person's onboarding. And always have the person sign off on any policies, procedures, or trainings that they've completed, indicating that they've reviewed them, they participated in them, they understand, and that they're going to comply with them. And then this is something that you keep on file.
And this can be done in most HRIS systems. So you could definitely do that, but we do recommend sitting down and addressing certain handbook items with your new hires at the onboarding experience so that they can pay attention to those. I mean, if we're gonna be completely honest, I would say not too many people actually read through the whole handbook.
No.
We want them to, because we put important things in there.
Yes. It's usually a very comprehensive document. And what I like to do when I onboard someone is go through, just show them the table of contents. And then I like to walk them through some of the key policies that I know they're going to use a lot.
Me too.
PTO, time and attendance, benefits.
Dress code.
Yes.
Let's see, I'm trying to think of anything else that I usually always have come up.
Code of conduct I go through.
Yeah. We'll think of them as we go on.
But yeah, it's good to at least review those with them because as we said, not everyone's gonna read through all 50 to 70 pages of your handbook.
Yeah.
But at least they know where to go when they have a question.
Wonder if we made it a graphic novel with more people read it.
Probably. Maybe.
That's an idea. Graphic novels, the new handbook. I like it. So, and then we're going to talk about role clarification and job specific training, right? So we need to define the roles and the responsibilities clearly. I mean, I've seen people hired just because they didn't want to pass on this person, right? You bring them into the organization and you're not even sure what they're doing yet. And that lasts for a lot longer than you think because nobody ever finds the time to go ahead and clarify that role. Then job-specific training programs and resources, addressing skill gaps, and development opportunities. So a job description is essential because it's really going to determine whether the role is in line with the applicant's skill set and whether it's a job they actually want to do or can. It's going to give the company and the potential employee a full understanding of the role. And then explain a company role, outlining the job duties and requirements that the employer expects, and again, expectations of the employee. We're going to give potential candidates clarity on what the employer expects before they even apply for the job. And then it's going to serve as a basis for interviewing candidates, orienting a new employee, and evaluating their job performance. Additionally, on that topic, some state or federal laws are going to require reasonable accommodations for qualified individuals with disabilities. A job description can help with the interactive process that such laws require. If you don't know what the employee does, then you certainly can't know what accommodations they need. A job description serves as a starting point or a conversation starter for what the employer believes to be the essential job duties. The applicant or the employee must then identify which of the listed duties he or she cannot perform, rather than not knowing what they
Yeah.
can't do. The job descriptions are also going to help justify an employee's exempt status. So job descriptions by themselves are not going to determine whether a person should be exempt or non-exempt under applicable wage and hour laws. So a job description must accurately first reflect the duties of a particular position. In addition, there are other elements of the applicable exemptions that must also be present with respect to each individual worker, right, to qualify them as exempt. A lot of people use the term salaried almost sort of across the board, but bear in mind that there is a difference. You could have a salaried non-exempt employee. So we're talking here about exempt versus non-exempt. If you claim a person is exempt from minimum wage, timekeeping, and overtime requirements under the executive exemption, for example, the job description should state that the employee manages a recognized department or subdivision of the company and regularly supervises at least 2 or more full-time equivalent employees every week. This is key here. So again, it's bearing repeating that employee manages a recognized department or subdivision of the company and regularly supervises at least 2 or more full-time equivalent employees every week. They need to be part of hiring and firing decisions. Other managerial duties should also be referenced in the job description. If you have an employee who does not do those things but still called a manager, for example, don't be fooled. They're likely non-exempt. So please be very careful with your determination of that particular exemption status. The introductory period. An assessment of fit. Employers use this time to assess whether the new employee is a good fit for the company culture, values, and the job requirements. So we kind of call this the introductory period, or sometimes people call it probationary period.
Oh, I don't like when people call it probationary period.
Because it almost gives the people an idea that if they don't pass something, then they're gone.
Right.
Right. And it just feels wrong. So
it's a very negative connotation.
It really is. And considering that no good HR person is ever going to fire somebody just because, right? There's always going to be reasons for it. And it rarely happens in the first 30, 60 days, I think. You know, it takes a little bit longer to really find that out. So anyway, so we're going to assess their fit. And then during the introductory period, the employer is going to assess the new employee's performance on the job. So performance evaluation. The evaluation is going to help determine whether the individual meets the expected standards and whether they can successfully contribute to the company or the organization. Next, training and adaptation is part of the introductory period. So here, the new employee is going to go through training and orientation programs during this period. And this is going to help them to become familiar with not only company policies, but procedures and the expectations. We talked about that earlier. It also provides an opportunity for the employee to adapt to the work environment. I think we kind of know that there's like about a 3-month period before an employee actually feels like they even make a contribution. So bear that in mind. They're likely not going to do that in the first week. Then we're talking about clarification of expectations. Employers use the introductory period in this way to clarify the expectations regarding job responsibilities, performance standards, and workplace conduct. Somewhere after the first month, it's a good idea to almost check in and just make sure that they really do understand that. Okay. Then communication and feedback. Regular communication. Can we say that again?
Regular communication.
Yes. This and feedback is crucial during the introductory period. Employers can provide guidance here and address any concerns or questions the new employee might have. Because, right, if somebody's doing something wrong, they will continue to do it wrong until you talk to them and tell them that it is. So
same thing if they're doing something right.
Yes.
Doing well.
Yes, 100%. And then cultural integration, which we talked about earlier in our fun little activity?
Exercise.
Yeah. The introductory period allows new employees to integrate into the company's culture and the work environment. And that's ongoing and part of team dynamics, communication style, finding, you have to figure out where your groove is. and what the atmosphere is like in the organization. And an introductory period is a trial period for both parties, the parties being the employer and the employee. It's going to provide an opportunity for the employee to assess whether the job meets their career goals, right? And for the employer to determine if that individual is the right fit for the team and the organization. And we urge you, as well as that new hire, not to be too hasty in making that decision. And we hope the introductory period is satisfactory to give each part of that team the ability to make a smart decision on that. And as we kind of touched upon a second ago, we'll use it for addressing issues, and we'll want to do that early. A proactive approach here helps in resolving issues before they escalate. Overall, the introductory period is a valuable time for both the employer and the new employee, and it really serves to establish a solid foundation, the building blocks, if you will, for a successful working relationship. So should not be really underestimated in its importance.
Definitely not. And typically, a lot of employers have an introductory period that lasts about 90 days. But what happens with that employee after 90 days? So is that person just kind of left out there to float on their own? Or is there a plan for continued support? So this is the point when most people drop off, and it's either due to a lack of feedback, a lack of constructive criticism, or any clarity moving forward. So what you want to do is have a plan for what is the trajectory for this person following that 90-day period. And this includes developing a check-in process. So how often will they check in with their supervisor? What will be discussed during that check-in? And also identifying any goals and milestones. So what is the expectation? What does this person need to accomplish? How are they going to do it? What support will they have? And then you want to continue providing opportunities for ongoing training and development. So we talked about, role clarity, role specific training. What's the plan moving forward? Will they have additional opportunities, and what do those look like? And then also celebrating achievements. So we kind of just mentioned it. Share when they do something well. People want to feel valued. They want to know that they're doing a good job. And if you let the person know, you're doing a great job, you're doing this very well, and you want to be specific, they'll continue to do that. If you don't let them know that that behavior is highly valued, they might stop doing it. So you want to reinforce that good behavior. And then another thing you can do is create cohorts of new hires. So kind of look for opportunities to connect new hires together, especially, talking back to the predictive index. If you do have people who tend to be more collaborative learning really provides an immersive experience that encourages new employees to bond with their colleagues. They can share experiences, and then they can develop a better understanding of their role within the company. And then this also helps your new hires build relationships, not only with other new hires, but within the company as well. So again, consider that onboarding buddy or mentor, provide that new employee with ongoing support, some clearly defined responsibilities, and setting expectations past those first 90 days.
Right, and opportunities to connect.
Exactly.
So we talked about feedback and continuous improvement. So the one thing that we definitely want to have, as we mentioned, is regular check-ins and feedback sessions. We want to gather employee feedback on onboarding. So definitely a survey afterward that's anonymous, mind you, regarding how well they feel onboarding went is important. Make sure that there are iterative improvements based on feedback. Conduct regular surveys to measure employee engagement. I worked for someone once who never wanted to do a survey because they said that if you do a survey, then people think there's going to be change. Well, the hope is that you'll be prepared to be making change as a result of those surveys. So do them regularly and make sure that you make changes based on them. Utilize your available data. Make informed decisions with it. Survey new hires on job satisfaction. Track the time to productivity. There are metrics that we can use. Keep a pulse on overall morale. That's not so hard, especially if you're an HR professional, right? You learn that by walking around and interacting with people. Happy employees are 12% more productive, and happy employees are more likely to stay long-term. A VP and I one time graphed what we thought it was gonna look like, and we came up with a new hire after year 2 was usually where you were ready to lose people, believe it or not. And then year 5, if an employee stayed past 5, it's usually pretty good that you're doing something right with that employee, but you have to make sure you catch them by year 2. Otherwise, you could have lost them without even knowing it. And again, on those metrics, measure voluntary and involuntary turnover. Figure out what's happening, how it's happening, and why it's happening, and then make some changes.
All right, so we touched on this a little bit. We know we have quite a few participants that have remote employees, but what about those remote employees? So back to that survey we were talking about, it found that remote employees are far more likely than on-site employees to feel undertrained. And they are 117% more likely than on-site employees to plan to leave their employer soon.
117%. First of all, that's a weird number. And second of all, wow.
Yes. And that is concerning at the least. So let's talk a little bit more about how to onboard those remote employees. So obviously you'll be doing your onboarding virtually. The first thing you want to do is consider the state and city that the employee works in and what those legal requirements are. So think about what types of benefits this person needs to be offered. Are you set up for their payroll taxes? You want to make sure you get these things in place before you bring this person on board. This way their onboarding is seamless. And then another thing you can do is send them an electronic pre-boarding packet. And again, this can be done through an HRIS. And it really helps make a great first impression as you help to get them oriented to your company.
I always checked in with them a week later. After we did everything, I always checked in with that person who was remote a week later because they wouldn't come to my office, right?
No.
And then just checked in. Did you get the training you need to? Did you get all your accesses?
Yeah, exactly. So having that plan to check in with them, having those open communication channels. So make sure that your remote employees are able to connect with everyone and that they have everything needed to do their job. You can have IT set up their accounts for email, chat, any project management software. Make sure that they're invited to any department and company meetings and that they're able to attend them online, especially if you're in a hybrid environment or you're mostly in person. You want to make sure that you're set up so you can include this person. And then also set up times for that new hire to meet with other team members. Another thing to do is spread the word. Let the team know and other workers know that this person is joining and what this person's role will be. So you can send out a mass email, but you want to make sure that you're communicating it there.
Yeah, out of sight, out of mind is sometimes one of the things that leaves a remote employee out in the cold.
Yeah, definitely. And then also utilize your performance management systems. So as a remote worker dives kind of further into their job, strong performance management is key. It really helps foster and support that person's success. But really improving that performance requires a lot more than your traditional annual employee review. So again, back to that regular communication. Have regular meetings scheduled with the supervisor throughout their first year to set goals and to set performance milestones. Have check-ins to discuss their progress, and really trying to solve any issues before they become a bigger problem. I think the key thing with hiring people remotely is, one, really being prepared and having a plan for how you're going to integrate this person into your culture. I've heard a lot from people that join companies remotely that they feel like they don't know anyone because they don't see them, especially if the company is primarily in person and it is happening more often.
And Meredith, thanks for sharing. They provide a copy of the agenda for the first day for the new hires with the details on what they need to know. And they get it a couple days in advance so they can think about and plan. So that's actually great.
So we're going to briefly just touch on independent contractors. In the interest of time, we'll keep this a little bit short, but we often do have to onboard independent contractors. The first thing you want to just make sure is that the person should be classified as an independent contractor.
Ding, ding, ding. That one's huge.
Yeah. So there's certain criteria, and I'll go over this very high level. But really, you want to ask yourself when it comes to this worker, are they directing their own work? Are they responsible for their own expenses related to equipment and tools? And are they providing a key aspect of the regular business of the company? If they're providing a key aspect of your regular business, it's very possible that they should be classified as an employee and not an independent contractor. A best practice is to hire independent contractors who already have their own business entity. And they can file for a DBA certificate with the New York City clerk, or they can look into their state options.
So we just provided a real quick onboarding for contractors checklist, if you will. Like, very simple, but it's not a bad idea to have. So the service to be provided, the contractor's name, their email, their contact information, and then we're looking for a W-9 form, proof of indemnity insurance, proof of workers' compensation insurance. These are pretty key. Withholding, is backup withholding required? And take a look at some of the other items, depending on what they do for you. We'll know what they need to have. And then on the other side, it's kind of just a quick graph here to help you make a decision about whether they really should be a contractor or not. So again, just take a quick glance. If somebody is getting training from the employer, they're an employee. If you have a contractor, they should already know how to do what you're asking them to do.
All right, great. So that brings us to the conclusion of our session. Thank you all very much for joining us. If you didn't get a chance to watch the first session of this, you can access it online on our website. If you did enjoy the session, please consider sharing a review. We really do appreciate any feedback that's shared. And you can do this by using the QR code.
It helps us keep doing what we're doing. We have a lot of fun, but honestly, we have fun all day long talking to each other. So if you like hearing what we have to say, come back on April 17th at noon. We'll be talking about what to do when your new employee is not getting it. Thank you to those of you who have made positive comments to us in the chat. Take it out of the chat and put it in a review. Do that for us. Thank you again very much, and have a wonderful Wednesday. If you have any questions, we have a couple seconds to stick around. You can throw them in the chat and we'll be happy to answer them. Bye.